And we're joined here today with Trevor Dirksen. You are the CEO of ePlay Digital. My good man, thank you for coming on and welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
Absolutely. Now, we're having you on today because we're continuing our quest and our journey as a community into the e-gaming and esports world, where a lot of people are very interested by it. They know it's around. They know it's going to be a big thing, but we're continuing to find out, okay, how do people make money? How do investors make money? And what are the different companies that are out in the space currently? Which leads us to your company and a perfect segue into who is your company and what is it that you're doing in this space?
Brandon, it's great that you distinguished e-gaming and esports, two very, very different things. They don't have to be the same at all, but of course they can work together. So ePlay is a game publisher, first of all. Our first title is a game called Big Shot Basketball. It's an NBA game. It's in the Apple App Store, just released in the Android App Store as well earlier this week. And so the revenue, if you think from an investor's point of view, the revenue may dictate what kind of company it is. So when we think of a mobile game or a console game or a PC game, they may make money from downloading the game. ePlay doesn't. Our games are free, just like Fortnite and Pokemon Go. They make money from in-app purchases and advertising. And that is a pretty well-trodden path. It's over $100 billion business. Mobile gaming is 61 billion of that 100 billion. And if you just take mobile advertising, it's $143 billion business. Over 100 billion of that is gaming. So ePlay is in the game publishing side and very, very focused on that. But it's also in the esports side. And we can dive into that a little bit further, but I just wanted to say, ePlay makes games. We've got a couple of them. The first few are out on Android and iOS. Great basketball game. We're looking forward to the basketball season coming up here. I can talk to you a little bit more about Big Shot and esports.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a distinction that's very important for investors to realize because it is very different from esports and e-gaming. And one of the things that we started realizing as well is, certain things to look for, like a company building the actual game, building the platform, understanding there's advertising, there's a lot of cool different elements into this burgeoning e-gaming and esports world, and there's just a lot of opportunity. So why don't we jump into, like you were just saying, the esports side of your company? What are you doing on that side?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The big opportunity is on the esports side in terms of growth. So we've got a mature mobile gaming business, $61 billion. Esports is maybe $1 billion this year. So mobile gaming, 61 times the size and not growing at the rate of esports. Esports is said by Deloitte. My good friend Duncan Stewart says it will grow about 35% in 2019. We'll see.
Wow.
The end of the year is near. It may have grown more than 35%. I believe a lot of the attention in esports is actually missing some of the revenue opportunities. So when we think esports, we have to think sports. And we think sports, we think sports teams. I think sports television networks. I think sports brands. I think youth sports. All of those things make a ton of money. Some of those things are good public companies. So if you back up esports into sports, you say to yourself, okay, you might say to yourself, where are the high margins? Where are the good investment opportunities? If you look at sports teams that are public, not esports teams that are public, sports teams that are public, there's not many. I happen to know exactly how many there are. There's three, a couple of soccer, a couple of hockey teams, Toronto, New York. That's about it. And so in the esports space, we've already have more public sports teams or sports organizations, franchisees holders, than we do in the sports world. But the sports world is big, from youth sports to sporting brands to sporting equipment and so on. And of course, sports gambling is another part of the sports business. If you think DraftKings, you have to think the same. I suppose you don't have to, but you have to think the same in esports. Esports is quite different in a couple of ways. Almost none of the people at an NFL football game or a CFL football game are there to learn how to play the game better. They're not sitting in the crowd dying to leave the professional game, or they're watching it on TV. They're not looking to put that into work on the flag football field or the football field tomorrow or next weekend. It's just not a mandate. And the number of players in football of any kind from high school is quite limited. So there's 2.2 billion mobile or console and PC game players, 2.2 billion game players. The majority of those now are mobile players, but there's not 100% mobile players. So 2.2 billion game players. How many football players? I happen to know the number. I just can't remember off the top of my head. It's not many. It's like 63,000 or something like that. So 2.2 billion game players could also all be viewers. Mm-hmm. They could also all be participants in esports tournaments, from, let's say, the equivalent of youth sports, amateur to pro sports. That's a lot of people. There's a lot more people than watch football, and it's a huge potential, both from a, let's say, a viewership point of view, and from a participant point of view. Making a distinguishing between kind of two revenue sources there: advertising only, really, for viewership, and tournament play, cash tournaments, other kinds of revenue for participants. Huge opportunity, much more than we can see in let's say, amongst football fans.
No, absolutely. And currently, for your business right now, are you eyeing a certain element of that? Or are you already in a certain element as well, like to share with our community? How are you going to be taking advantage of this esports growth that you were just saying is going to be happening this year and moving forward? I agree with that. How do you take part of that?
Yeah, so in various ways. I'll focus on just one, and it's probably the highest margin way you can make money in esports. And I'll dive a little bit over into how Fortnite is making money. It's not in esports and gaming, but it sometimes gets confused as esports revenue. The first very high margin place that we're focused, and we'll focus on other parts of esports as well down the road, is something we've released in the last 2 months, really the last August 1st. We started collecting data on it. So inside of our game, let me back up. I'll describe Big Shot, our flagship game. Big Shot is a game that allows users, in a Pokemon Go style way, to go find not monsters like you might in Pokemon Go, but NBA players. They don't have to be NBA players. It's just that we launched the first game as a basketball game, so they're NBA players. LeBron James, Kawhi, those are hard guys to find. In fact, for some reason, they're really, really difficult to find. But you might get hints and tricks in the game. To get those hints and tricks, you might have to buy. That's not considered esports revenue. That's you buy a level upgrade or a swap. That's considered mobile gaming revenue. But when you find a coin that is gold in our games, you play a shootout. You have to compete for that precious resource, whatever it is. Let's say it's LeBron James. LeBron James is a precious resource in the Big Shot game, and you have to compete. First, you have to find it, and then you have to compete for it. There's hints and tricks on how you find it. We make money from some people that decide not to play all the way through, and they want shortcuts, kind of mobile gaming revenue by people taking those shortcuts. Then people have to play a shootout, and the prizes include getting LeBron James drafted to their roster, their Big Shot roster, and the opportunity to win either more virtual points or cash dollars. Now, we haven't turned cash on yet. We've only been playing virtual currency. We've got to make sure the game is fair. There's no way to cheat. There's no advantage. And so you play a little shootout game. We call it Swish. And Swish has been played over 50,000 times since August 1st. And that means over 50,000 times people have spent at least 2 of their virtual currency units in the game, their points in the game, 2 Big Shot points, to wager to get LeBron James drafted, and to win a cash prize, up to, or not a cash prize, a virtual currency prize, more points, up to 6,000 points. We'll be turning cash on very, very soon to see how that converts from virtual currency, 50,000 games, two virtual currency units per player per game, how we turn that into real cash. Those cash tournaments is a form of esports revenue. It's not gambling, it's prizing, it's built into mobile gaming, and it's really allowing people to play amateur esports, maybe to become professional, maybe to make a lot of money, or maybe it's just to get LeBron James. They can use their virtual currency or they can use cash.
Absolutely. Now, is this game in all of North America? Is this United States focused? Like, where can people participate in this?
Yeah, so you can download Big Shot Basketball, iOS and Android, from the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And you can download Big Shot Swish, the practice game, the standalone game. So what we did is we built Big Shot Basketball as our flagship game. And there's a lot of different challenges. Some of them are fantasy sports-like challenges, like, you know, who's going to get the most three-pointers tonight? And can I build a dream team? Those challenges are built right into Big Shot Basketball. And then there's a bunch of mini games that you play, including this shootout format to perhaps win more points, win cash down the road very soon, and get LeBron onto your roster. We spun Swish off into a standalone game. So people are playing Big Shot Swish outside of Big Shot Basketball, and they're playing it inside of Big Shot Basketball. Very, very exciting. We've got other mini games that we'll be spinning off. Those allow us to cross market and make money from both mobile gaming revenue sources. I was going to say traditional. It's traditional for the mobile gaming industry. We've been doing this for a while. For maybe esports investors, it's kind of a new way to make money through in-app purchases and through these cash tournaments, these prizes.
Absolutely. And this is for Canadians and for Americans, or North America?
Yeah, okay. It's actually, I was going to say it's global, but we're not in China yet. And that's a quite intentional play, both in esports and mobile gaming. One has to step into China quite intentionally with partners, and we're outside of China, but we're in we're about 150 countries as of, let's say, last month.
Gotcha. And for investors, if an investor's hearing this, they're hearing about the game, like, okay, this could be something here, and they might download it later and play it, whatever it be. But from an investor standpoint, what are they to be excited about in this coming year in terms of the potential revenue that you're bringing in terms of the growth of your company? As we know, all companies need money to operate. That's just right across. It doesn't matter what company you are. What should investors be looking into for your company and different milestones that may be coming up in the near future?
Well, I think investors should look for, first, a really strong foundation. You mentioned earlier, Brandon, about owning intellectual property may be pretty important. And so some esports investments, maybe the intellectual property is a logo. They have a bunch of contracts with players. But they don't own much else. We own our flagship game, Big Shot Basketball. We've already spun out other intellectual property from that game, and of course, we've started with basketball. We can add other sports, and we will be adding other sports. And our engine allows us to do sports, esports, and entertainment titles. So Big Shot Basketball is the first flagship. We'll be adding other flagship titles. Very, very exciting stuff happening there. So what people should look for is how extensible is that intellectual property. What we're showing them so far, promising more in the future, what we're showing them so far is one spin-off. We're showing them we can develop for iOS and Android. That's pretty important, especially with sports. Maybe not so much in the entertainment space. You can make a lot of money just with iPhone, but in sports, you're dealing more with Android users. With a global audience, you're dealing more with Android users. So in addition to kind of those strong foundations of intellectual property and ability to execute in the marketplace, what people should look for really is data from the company. You build a game, what's the first thing you need? You need downloads. You should be able to acquire those downloads at a low customer acquisition cost. If you're not, investors are spending a lot of money acquiring customers. So they should look for ePlay to report those successes, that data in the marketplace, and we'll start doing that. They should look for signs that they've got a good plan around that. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the Big Shot flagship game has celebrities built right into the game, and we're announcing and coming out with more celebrities. So the first celebrity that we've announced is Lindsay McCormick. She's a sports broadcaster. She is a 3D model in the game. She has a function in the game. She helps you make one of your in-app purchases more effective, the swap in-app purchase that allows you to swap the players you find on the map. And Lindsay, of course, she has a TV show. She has a social media following. She's a wonderful person, a good friend to ePlay, and she is part of promoting and lowering that customer acquisition cost. I often say to people that have ideas for me. If I ask them, how are you going to market it, and if they say, well, we're going to just use Facebook advertising to get a bunch of downloads. Yeah. I just turn around and I go invest more in Facebook, because I wish them luck. I want them to get lots of money so that I can make a bunch of money on Facebook. So you need an unfair marketing advantage, and Lindsay's part of that. We've built a 7-time NBA champion, Robert Horry. Do you remember, Brandon, do you remember Robert Horry?
I don't personally know.
Okay, so a lot of Canadians don't know Rob. He won championships in Houston. He broke Sacramento's hearts when he was with the Lakers. He's a friend in Los Angeles. His nickname was Big Shot, so you can kind of see where some of this inspiration for the Big Shot basketball game has come from. So Rob, in addition to being a character in the game and helping users find three-point players, he is the coach of the Big Shot basketball team, an LA-based team that runs around on some weekends, goes to tournaments wearing the Big Shot colors. They wear the logo that's over my shoulder on their shorts, their hoodies, their jackets, their jerseys, and so on. And Rob Horry, the 7-time NBA champion, is the coach of that team. So obviously he also wears that logo. So those unfair marketing advantages and others that we'll be announcing, celebrities we build into the game, are important things to look for. So that should drive the CAC cost down, the customer acquisition cost down. That should drive up downloads. Those are all things investors should be looking for numbers. They should also be looking at retention rate. They should be looking at companies that report that retention rate. We've been doing that through our beta, and we'll continue to do that through our version 1. That 50,000 hosted esports tournaments is a really, really important number. That shows high engagement. So we got some downloads. Those downloads have led to 50,000 shootouts, head-to-head tournaments. That's a really, really important number for investors to have. Why? Because it's showing engagement. If we can get their attention enough to download it, that's one thing. If we can get and hold their attention, either with and report that with retention rate or signs of engagement, like that 50,000 number, and then showing that how that grows. We own those people during those moments. We own them. We own their attention. And anytime you own somebody's attention, even if it's for 30 seconds, but if especially it's for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and that's another number investors should be looking for from companies like ours, is how much time are we taking? Because that will correlate directly to advertising dollars.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate going into detail there and talking to us about both your game Big Shot, but some elements for people to be looking into as well. If people were to, they're still curious, they want to find out more, where can they turn to? What website or information can they turn to find out more about your company?
Yeah, well, we're pretty active on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook as well. The Big Shot labeled social feeds are meant for end users. We're not really speaking to investors. We're speaking to end users on that. So the ePlay Twitter feed is a good place to stay tuned. Of course, we publish news every couple of weeks. We keep people up to date on those things like I mentioned, the retention rate, the downloads, the engagement numbers, and we'll continue to do that, especially now that we officially launched these games on both iOS and Android. Until the beginning of the summer, we were in beta mode. Now we are officially launched and released, and looking forward, obviously, to a basketball season that's actually starting in less than a month now, the preseason, and very, very excited about our off-season performance. Way better than expected, and obviously assumed to build that massively during the preseason and during the regular season of the NBA.
Absolutely. Well, Trevor, I appreciate very much for your time and coming on the show and talking about your company. For those investors who are looking for more as well, I believe you're trading under the ticker EPY, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
EPY, you can check out more. But thanks again for coming on, and looking forward to seeing Big Shot and the different things you're doing really take ground in the next coming months, especially going into that NBA season like you're talking about as well.
Thanks, Brandon. And when LeBron scores, you score.
There we go. Take care now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.